Have you ever found yourself sitting quietly with a cup of tea thinking, why do I feel like I'm giving so much and still being treated like an option? You've lived a full life. You've raised families, worked hard, kept households together, and yet now, in this chapter of life, you may still find yourself wondering, where's the love, the respect, the admiration you know in your heart you deserve? Let's be real. Dating or even just relating to men after 60 can feel like navigating a new world. Maybe you've been married and divorced. Maybe you've lost someone you loved deeply, or maybe you simply never found someone who truly saw your worth. Whatever your journey, you're not alone. And here's the truth. Men will treat you like a queen, but only when you start treating yourself like one first. Now, I know that might sound like just another self-help slogan, but today, I want to walk with you, not lecture you, and share something powerful. This is not about changing who you are, but remembering who you are. Because that woman inside you, she's always been a queen. It's just time the world caught up. Let's start with something that seems simple but changes everything: knowing your worth. Knowing your worth doesn't mean being arrogant or walking around expecting the world to bow at your feet. No. It means sitting with yourself and saying, I deserve love that is patient. I deserve kindness that is consistent. I deserve to feel safe and seen. It means you stop accepting crumbs when you know you're worthy of the whole meal. Here's something that might resonate with you. A woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. She doesn't shrink herself just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. She simply is. She walks into a room, not to be noticed, but because she belongs there. That kind of energy changes how men see you. Confidence isn't loud, it's steady. It's the way you sit tall, how you look someone in the eyes, how you speak with calm conviction. I've heard so many women say, well, maybe it's too late for me. And to that, I say, absolutely not. In fact, this might be the perfect time. You've got wisdom. You've got clarity, and hopefully you're done with the games. You're not here to prove yourself anymore. You're here to be yourself, and that's where your worth lives. And once you've got that foundation in place, something else becomes just as important: setting and maintaining high standards. Let's talk about standards, because this is where so many of us get tripped up. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that being easygoing or low maintenance made us more lovable. But let's be honest, how often did that really get us what we needed? Standards aren't about being picky or difficult. They're about clarity. They're about self-respect. When you say, I don't tolerate lies, or I won't allow emotional neglect, you're not being harsh, you're protecting your peace. You're giving a man the opportunity to rise, not setting him up to fail. But here's the catch: setting standards is one thing. Keeping them? That's the real challenge. Especially when feelings get involved. Maybe you meet someone who's charming, who makes you laugh, who says all the right things, but then his actions start to wobble. He cancels plans, goes days without calling, doesn't follow through. And you tell yourself, well, maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe this is just how men are these days. No, my friend. This is where queens are made. You see, when you let a man cross a line and face no consequence, you're not being kind. You're teaching him how to treat you. And men? They take notes based on what you allow. If you tolerate inconsistency, they'll be inconsistent. If you let them get away with bare minimum effort, they'll stay right there at the minimum. But if you show, consistently, that you only make space for men who meet your standards with respect, effort, and honesty, that's when the right kind of man shows up. And he will, because men know when a woman values herself. That's also why it's so important to understand you don't need to explain your standards to everyone. You don't have to defend your expectations. You're not asking for too much when you ask to be treated well. You're just asking the wrong person if they can meet them. And when someone can't, let them go, gently but firmly. That's not a failure. That's a filter. You're clearing the path for someone who can show up right. I once spoke with a woman named Diane. She was 67, widowed for nearly a decade, and had started dating again. The first man she met was charming, called her every morning, sent flowers, even talked about their future. But when she started voicing her boundaries, like how she didn't want late-night calls or that she expected consistency, he began pulling away. At first, she was tempted to compromise. But then she remembered something her daughter told her. "Mom, the way you let him treat you is the way he'll treat you." So Diane stood her ground, and he disappeared. It hurt, yes. But weeks later, she met a man who listened, respected her boundaries, and showed up on time. She didn't have to remind him of her value. He saw it because she saw it first. That's the kind of shift we're talking about here. And it all begins with you. So if you're watching this and thinking, "I don't know where to start," start small. Wake up tomorrow and do one thing that reminds you of your worth. Maybe it's putting on that red lipstick you haven't worn in years. Maybe it's saying no to something that drains you. Maybe it's journaling what you want instead of what you'll settle for. Each little action sends a message, not just to men, but to the world. I matter. I deserve love, and I'm not afraid to wait for it. And yes, waiting can feel lonely sometimes. But I promise you this, being alone and peaceful is far better than being together and miserable. And when a man sees that you're not afraid of being on your own, that you're not desperate for company, but instead selective about who you let into your heart, that's magnetic. That's irresistible. Because the truth is, men respect what you respect. And when you carry yourself like a queen, not with arrogance but with quiet confidence, they know they can't step to you with games. They either step up or they step out. And either way, you win. Let's pause here for a moment and breathe that in. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not asking for too much. You're just stepping into your truth, one graceful, powerful step at a time. Now, let's keep going. Because knowing your worth and setting your standards is only the beginning of this journey. There's another piece that ties it all together and makes the difference between being tolerated and being cherished. So, once you know your worth and you've learned to set and maintain those high standards, something incredible begins to shift inside you. You stop looking outside for validation. You stop waiting for someone to prove that you're lovable. And instead, you start showing up for yourself. And that, my friend, is where self-respect starts to take root and blossom. Let's talk about that for a minute. Because self-respect isn't about being tough or putting up walls. It's not about pretending you don't need anyone. It's about honoring who you are and living in alignment with that. It's about saying, "I don't need to settle. I'm worth the wait." And that belief, when it's real and lived out day by day, is what men truly notice. You know, self-respect is the quiet power in how you carry yourself. It's in how you walk into a room, how you hold your boundaries, how you don't lower your standards just because you're afraid of losing someone. In fact, self-respect means you're willing to lose someone before you lose yourself. And that's the kind of strength that not only commands respect from others, it inspires admiration. When a woman respects herself, she doesn't chase after someone who disappears for days and comes back with excuses. She doesn't tolerate being spoken to in a way that feels belittling or dismissive. She doesn't sit in relationships that make her question her worth. Instead, she walks away, not in anger, not in drama, but in peace. Because she knows peace is the prize, not the punishment. I want to pause here and say this with love. If you've ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have, don't beat yourself up. We've all been there. Sometimes we stay because we hope things will get better. Sometimes we stay because we're afraid to start over. Sometimes we stay because we think love means sacrifice. But there comes a point where staying becomes more painful than leaving. And that's when self-respect becomes your compass. And let me tell you something beautiful. When you carry that self-respect, something amazing happens. You no longer fear being alone. In fact, you start to cherish your own company. You enjoy your quiet mornings. You savor your walks. You learn to love the sound of your own thoughts. And from that place of fullness, you don't need a man. But if one comes along who adds to that peace, well, that's a blessing, not a rescue mission. Which brings me to something equally powerful: confident communication. Let's be honest, at this stage of life, no one has time for mind games. We've lived long enough to know that guessing, assuming, and hinting only lead to confusion and disappointment. If you want a relationship that feels solid, honest, and fulfilling, it starts with being able to say what you want and what you won't accept. A woman who communicates confidently isn't aggressive. She's not demanding. She's not trying to control the man she's with. But she is clear. She knows how to say, "This is what I need to feel loved," or "I'm not okay with that," without fear that she'll be seen as too much. And you know what? The right man will thank you for it, because now he knows how to show up. You've given him the map. No guessing required. I've met so many women who've told me, "I don't want to seem needy," or "I don't want to scare him off." But here's the thing. If a man is scared off by your honesty, he's not your man. It's that simple. The man who's right for you wants to know what makes you feel secure. He wants to understand how to love you better. And the only way he can do that is if you speak up, with confidence and kindness. Let's say you've been dating someone for a few months. He's nice, he's fun, but he hasn't mentioned anything about the future. You feel uncertain, maybe even a little anxious. A woman with self-respect doesn't stew in silence. She doesn't start playing games or waiting for him to read her mind. Instead, she sits down and says, "I really enjoy our time together. And I'm looking for something with direction and intention. How do you see this going?" Not as a threat, not as an ultimatum, just truth, spoken with clarity. And yes, it might feel scary, vulnerable, but you are too grown to keep shrinking to protect someone else's comfort. Your needs matter. Your voice matters. And the right man will lean in when you speak up, not lean away. There's something else I want to add here. Confident communication also means you listen just as much as you speak. You pay attention, not just to his words, but his actions. You don't just hear what he says, you notice if he follows through. Because a man who's right for you will not leave you confused. He'll be clear. He'll show you with consistency. And if he doesn't? That's all the answer you need. That clarity becomes even more important when you understand the next layer of this, one that many people overlook. And that is learning to let a man be king. Now stay with me, because this part surprises a lot of women. We often talk about wanting to be treated like a queen. And yes, you deserve that. But here's what people forget. A king will rise when he feels safe, supported, and seen by his queen. You see, men, especially in this season of life, want to feel respected. They want to feel like they have a purpose in your life, that they're not just tolerated but valued. That doesn't mean you become a doormat or that you stroke his ego all day, but it does mean you create space for him to show up as the man he wants to be. Let him open the door. Let him carry the groceries. Let him plan the date. Not because you can't do those things, but because it feels good for him to provide, to lead, to contribute. Men are wired to step into that role when the woman beside them knows how to receive it with grace. When you let a man be king, you're not giving away your power. You're inviting him to stand in his. That's how powerful partnerships are formed, not when one dominates the other, but when both rise together. A strong woman inspires a man to be stronger, not through pressure, but through presence. And that's the beautiful balance we're aiming for here. You standing fully in your worth, while creating space for him to do the same. No manipulation, no control, just mutual respect, understanding, and effort. The truth is, a man can only treat you like a queen if you've already decided to be one. And queens don't force anyone to rise, they simply don't accept less. And because of that, the right man will rise. He'll want to. He'll be drawn to the way you carry yourself, to your standards, your grace, your confidence. That's what makes the difference. Not games, not silence, not sacrifice, but truth, presence, and a deep, steady belief that you are worthy. Not someday, not if he changes, but right now. There's something truly remarkable that happens when you allow yourself to be both strong and soft, when you hold your standards high, speak your truth, and create space for a man to rise beside you. But to keep that balance steady, to maintain it even when life gets messy or emotions get stirred up, there's one more ingredient that brings it all together: emotional intelligence. Now, I know that phrase might sound clinical or like something from a psychology textbook, but it's actually very human, very natural, and very powerful. Emotional intelligence simply means understanding your emotions, managing them well, and responding to others with empathy and awareness. And let me tell you, in relationships, especially as we get older, it's one of the most important things you can have. Think about it. How many relationships have fallen apart not because of a lack of love, but because of poor communication, knee-jerk reactions, or emotional walls that never got taken down? Emotional intelligence is the skill that helps you avoid that. It's what allows you to pause instead of explode. It helps you listen even when you disagree. It helps you see your partner, not just react to him. When a woman has emotional intelligence, she doesn't let her temporary feelings create permanent damage. She doesn't say things out of anger just to hurt. She knows how to step back, breathe, and ask herself, what's really going on here? That kind of self-awareness changes everything. Because when you understand yourself, you can connect so much better with others, especially the man in your life. And emotional intelligence also means recognizing what's his and what's yours. Maybe he's quiet one evening, maybe he's distant, and instead of immediately assuming he must not care or I did something wrong, you step back and consider, maybe he had a rough day, maybe he's carrying something heavy. You don't take everything personally. You give space. You hold compassion without losing yourself in his storm. This doesn't mean you become his therapist. It just means you hold your ground while extending grace. Because here's the truth. Men often carry a weight they don't always know how to express. They're not always taught how to open up, how to cry, or how to say, I'm scared, or I'm hurting. But when you show up with emotional safety, when you become the calm, not the chaos, you give him the gift of being able to lay his armor down. And believe me, when a man feels emotionally safe with you, he will give you his very best. Not because you demanded it, not because you threatened to leave, but because he wants to. Because he sees that you're not going to judge him or shame him for being human. You become his peace, his home, and he will protect that fiercely. A woman with emotional intelligence also knows when to walk away, not in anger, not to punish, but because she sees that something no longer serves her. She doesn't stay stuck in cycles of blame or resentment. She lets go with grace. She forgives, not always to reconcile, but to release the weight from her own heart. That freedom is priceless. It also means not dragging old wounds into new chapters. We've all been hurt. We've all been disappointed. But healing those places inside you, that's how you make room for something better. Something deeper. You can't build something beautiful if you're always expecting it to fall apart. And emotional intelligence is what helps you rebuild your trust, not in them, but in yourself, in your choices, in your strength, in your ability to choose better this time around. You see, the woman who masters this quiet strength, who knows her worth, stands by her standards, communicates with clarity, respects herself, honors his masculinity, and leads with emotional wisdom, she doesn't need to ask to be treated like a queen. It just happens, naturally, consistently, because that's the energy she lives in. And here's the best part, you don't have to change who you are to become that woman. She's already inside you. Maybe she's been quieted by years of putting others first. Maybe she's buried under disappointments or heartbreaks. Maybe she forgot just how much she brings to the table, but she's still there, and it's never too late to let her lead. I want you to hear this with your whole heart. It is not too late to be deeply loved, to be respected, to be chosen and cherished and celebrated, not for how much you do, but for who you are. You don't need to beg for that. You don't need to perform or play small for that. You just need to stand in your truth and let the right man find you there. And if he hasn't shown up yet, that's okay, because you're already doing the work that matters. You're already building a life that's full and meaningful, whether there's a man in it or not. And from that place, love becomes the icing, not the whole cake. So take this moment right now to remind yourself, you are worthy. You are powerful. You are still growing, still glowing, still evolving. And any man who gets to walk beside you, he should feel lucky, because he is. If this message touched your heart today, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced this shift in your life? Are you stepping more into your self-worth now than you ever did before? Let's talk about it. Let's support each other, because we are stronger when we speak our truth together. And if you found value in this message, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. We're here to uplift, empower, and walk with you every step of the way. You deserve to feel seen, heard, and supported, no matter what age or stage of life you're in. Here's to loving yourself fiercely, to setting the bar high and watching the right people rise to meet it. And here's to living your best life, like the queen you truly are.